Hello, Brother Monroe here. Welcome back to Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts and how to design ships for the campaign. And today we are looking at destroyers. Now, destroyers are an interesting type of ship, and you will probably have quite a lot of them in the campaign because they're cheap, and well, they're your cheapest ship, and they can be in lots of places at once. So, what do you want now to do with a destroyer? Now, there are a few jobs they can do. They can protect convoys. They can hunt convoys. They can be a threat to large ships using torpedoes because they're very fast. They can get into a good position to launch, or relatively good position to launch, because, I mean, the AI is just going to avoid them anyway. They are good anti-submarine ships. They're good escorts for your larger vessels. They can lay mines. They can hunt mines, and they are the only class of ship that can do that. So different people have different approaches. Some people like to build 3 or 4 different classes of destroyer. You know, a surface raider destroyer, an anti-submarine destroyer, a mine-laying destroyer, a mine-sweeping destroyer hull, and have different types. For instance, you could, go for a very cheap and cheerful ship just with the mine-laying kit that's just there to lay mines. And that strategy does work. It is a little tricky because of how the game works, in that if there's a fight and the game pulls in destroyers, it doesn't know that some of your destroyer classes are meant for laying mines, and they'll end up in a fleet battle. So the other way of doing it is to build general purpose destroyers that can do everything. And that's the approach that I personally favour. But, if you prefer building lots of different types of destroyers, that's absolutely fine and can be very, very effective. Now, first of all, we need to choose our hull. We have a destroyer leader, we have a standard destroyer, and then we have 2 cheaper destroyers of an older type. You'll notice if you go from the destroyer 4 to the standard, there is a big jump in hull form, in stability, in floatability, and resistance. This thing is a lot better. It's also a little bit faster, 36-ish knots compared to 34.5. So, if you have access to the modern destroyers of any type, they are generally better than your destroyer 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever. You then have a choice between, again, most nations have this, the standard and the leader. The leader is basically bigger and bulkier and more expensive. For the most part, I tend to use the standards, because they give you most of what you want, and you don't really need the destroyer leader. It would be great if you could assign DDL and, form little squadrons, and I have done that in one of my campaigns. I think that was the French campaign? I might even have used a light cruiser as the destroyer leader, because some cruiser hulls look like this. Light cruiser hulls look like this. So if you're doing a destroyer leader, then that's fine. And most people, when they build destroyer leaders, build the general purpose type of destroyer with the large guns. And that tends to be how I build all my destroyers. So I don't really feel the need for destroyer leaders, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to go for the destroyer leader, the standard destroyer, not the destroyer leader, just to save a little bit of money. We're going to send our bulkheads to the middle values, and at 2,000 tons, that's absolutely fine. We do have different lengths, don't we? Yeah, we basically have 2 lengths. So at 2,000 tons, that gives us the longer hull, and we can boost up to 2,450 tons if we want. Some people like to reduce beam and draft on destroyers, especially because you don't really need the added protection. And you can make them go a lot faster. That's absolutely fine and valid, but I'm going to leave it on 0 just because we don't need to reduce beam and draft just now. So our maximum optimal speed is 35.7. So I'm actually going to have a look. 35.7 is 8.6 million. 36 is 10.5. So yeah, we're going to go at 35.7. That's going to be our top speed. We could reduce the beam and draft to get this up as well. But 35.7, we'll stick with that for now. In terms of towers, tower placement on destroyer hulls can be a little bit awkward because most of them have a break in them. Sometimes, though, if you hold down control, you can actually place them where you might not expect. You can actually stick the tower down here if you want. So do be aware of that. You can do funky tower placement. But on this hull, where the break is reasonably well placed, it's not stupidly far forward, putting it up here is fine. I'm going to set up my engine exactly the same. Setup. More than other ships, you might want to invest in auxiliary engines, because a slow destroyer is a dead destroyer. And if you've watched either of the how to build light or heavy cruiser videos, you'll have seen that when I'm doing it against enemy destroyers. Yeah, stick with you might want the even this, the minus 55% max speed penalty means that you're still able to go a reasonable speed. You might just survive, but they are very expensive. Auxiliary diesel engine, absolutely fine. In terms of guns, you early on in the game, 2-inch or 3-inch gun destroyers probably going to be your go-to because they fire fast enough that you might actually hit something. Later on, so by the time we're at 1930, which is the start date I recommend for most people, 4 and 5-inch guns are kind of where it's at. But for me, the 5-inch gun armed destroyer is just really nice. That's putting them into light cruiser territory. 5-inch guns can just be so utterly deadly. It's ridiculous. So we're going to use one of those. Again, somewhere between 8 and 10 guns is absolutely perfect. So we could go for 3 triple guns, and I think that will be absolutely fine. You can go ham and just like stuff as many guns as possible into a destroyer. Absolutely fine. Do that if you want. But we're going to go for triple guns. I think 2 on the front. These are 41 caliber. We don't really care about dick pen, so we might as well just make them 48s. Then we are going to want a funnel. 1 funnel's not enough, so let's go with 2. High engine efficiency is fine. It just means that we'll have a nice long range, which will allow us to, hunt convoys and stuff pretty easily. Then we want a secondary tower. All much of a muchness. There are 2 different types though. There's a small one and a huge one. I'm going to go for the Barbette Tower 3 because it's not as big, so it gives me more options when it comes to placing the damn things. And then I'm going to stick a triple gun on the back, on top of the Barbette Tower, and then I'm going to stick torpedo launcher on the back next to the depth charges. Very straightforward layout. Balancing these ships can be very difficult, but we'll do that at the end. You'll often see me like putting the torpedoes like in between the funnels or like here. You can move the ship around quite a lot, but if we can get something that looks sensible and normal out, that would be fantastic. Anti-flash protection, not super important on a destroyer, but if you take a flash fire, you are dead. These aren't particularly heavy things to put on a destroyer. It might not seem like much, but there's a big difference between a destroyer just being completely obliterated in one hit and just merely crippled. Because it might still be able to get a torpedo off. One torpedo launcher, the most you have, is absolutely fine. I would just generally go for the biggest torpedo you can. These things do often benefit from the increased torps, just being where you're quite likely to blow up. I often reduce their ammo, or I used to before 109. I tend to stick with standard now, but they typically don't use up all their ammunition in a single fight. Nowhere near it. Because they are either slaughtering something very quickly, or they're just kind of plinking away at a big ship that then turns around and evaporates them. So reduced shells can absolutely work. But I'm going to stick with standard for both. Again, increased torpedoes can be useful, but increases your chance of going boom. You're mainly going to be using HE shells, so maximum HE shells. We're going to go for a cordite build on this ship as well, because we're building more for rate of fire and HE damage than anything else. So in terms of the HE shell type, if we went cap ballistics, we do have a chance against an enemy destroyer of going through them, but it's not great. So I'm actually not going to go cordite. I'm going to go tube powder. Right, thinking, why are you going tube powder super heavy shells on a destroyer of all things? Well, that gets my belt pen with HE cap ballistic shells up to just about under 4-inch at 2,500 meters. Which means that if you are dueling with an enemy destroyer, you have a chance with an HE shell to go right through their main belt and completely obliterate them. And that, for me, is worth having. AP does not matter nearly as much. And I would consider leaving them as semi-armor piercing shells if you only ever intend to hunt destroyers. But if you do give them cap ballistic 2 shells, you can be pleasantly surprised by what they can do. Because at 5,000 meters, we have a actual penetration. Oops, helps if I can type on a calculator. Of 8 inches of like 150% quality armor. Now, 8 inches of pen is enough to go through a light cruiser. And this is one of the reasons I really like these 5-inch armed destroyers with the tube powder build, is you can really surprise the enemy by just soloing a light cruiser with these things. These 5-inch guns can really, really hurt. And if you have enough of them, they can even pile on damage against the extended armor of other ships. So those 5-inch guns, if you do go the tube powder super heavy build with cap ballistic on both, you are suddenly very, very spooky in terms of your ability to hurt things with guns. And, I would say, it catches the enemy by surprise. It doesn't, of course, because it's a computer. But the AI will be very confused, in quotes, why your destroyers are going out and absolutely massacring light cruisers that cost significantly more. So they're very, very cost-effective, nasty little buggers with these 5-inch super punchy guns. Definitely bring radar, definitely bring sonar, definitely bring a coincidence rangefinder. I personally would bring all 3 of the mines, the mine sweeping and the depth charges. They do have a weight implication, but do bring them. Very, very useful indeed. In terms of armoring, pretty simple really. You can only get up to 1.5-inch main belt, so you might as well have 1.5-inch everywhere. Main deck, just if you're taking deck hits on a destroyer, you're probably dead anyway, but it helps to have something. So I either run like very thin protection like this, or I will just max out the armor on that as well, so that you have as much protection as you possibly can on everything. And you can see we are underweight. And again, your turrets, you can completely max out protection on them, and we're still underweight. Absolutely fine. And if we did want to fit the mines, if we're playing the campaign, fitting all the mine laying stuff, we have loads of spare displacement here to fit it. We've got another 500 tons, so absolutely not a problem at all. All we really need to do now is to try and get that 4-weight offset down a little bit. Your pitch and roll, by the way, on a destroyer almost certainly always going to be bad. Because that offset, what's it doing? 4% base accuracy. Okay, and a bunch of other stuff. So, I want to shift our torpedoes back a bit. I want to shift our tower back a little bit. Shift our funnels back a little bit. I'm trying not to make it look goofy. Tower's pretty much where it is. Oh, do you know what? We could maybe try a different barbette. It's not as big. Yeah, that's much better. Now I have an halfway offset and I can move all this forward again. You'll often find yourself just fiddling around with things. Actually, let's go halfway offset, because I can bring this back. Oh, 0.1. Nah, 0.1. I think that's as good as I'm going to get it. 0.1 on the destroyer, though. That's pretty good, and gives you, like, 0. 0 impact. 0.1% rudder shift speed debuff. That's fine. And there we have it. One little destroyer. Nice to have. It's always nice to have more speed. More range can be very useful, but as you can see, we have pretty good range. More bulkheads can be helpful, but is expensive. Crew quarters being spacious can actually be really nice. Little bonus if you're going for long range destroyers. They do tend to take hits, so you do tend to lose crew, so a spacious crew can help. Don't go for the triple bottom. As I said, auxiliary engines, nice to have. Extra torpedoes, nice to have as well. An RDF perhaps. And yeah, your minesweepers and your depth charges. I would definitely include those first of all before you start looking for nice things. And you don't need, especially the deck armor, you don't need 1.5 inches of deck armor. But it is nice just going in with the 1.5 inch brick. They can be surprisingly effective. But there you go. That's it. And she's only 23 million. Now that compares to our heavy light cruiser, which was what, 85, 86 or something like that in the end. Yeah, you could get nearly 4 of these for that sort of price, and that is appealing. Once you get access to the good 5-inch gun tech, the Mark IIIs and above, and you get good access to the modern destroyers, you can really produce ships that are pretty nice. Anyway, let's give her a crew, and let's try her out. So I just have a single enemy destroyer and some transports. As you can see, she turns very nicely indeed. Yeah, I think she's pretty nice looking. Again, you don't want to go crazy with your destroyers. You can absolutely stuff them full of guns, but believe me, 9 5-inch, what are these, 48s? Perfectly effective. Let's switch the torpedoes off for now. Some people do like building torpedo attack destroyers. I personally find them nearly useless, but to each their own. That is actually the enemy destroyer. I was kind of hoping to find the transports, but they're probably going to be shooting torpedoes at me. Yeah, there they go. Try and sneak past them. I must be using fast torpedoes. That's crazy. Let's do a donut. What are they running? 4.1-inch guns. Not many of them. Bang. And you see how much damage that single hit did. Damaged the steering, caused all sorts of flooding. Yeah, very dangerous. These ships. Ooh, they didn't actually get a hit back. They got a 3-inch gun as well. Let's have a look at you. 34 knots. Loads of torpedoes. Weird gun layout. Should have slowed them down enough now that I can just hunt the transport. There it is. Just to go show what those cat ballistic HE shells are like in terms of shooting at unarmoured targets. Oh, they do have some guns. That's fun. Got some armed merchantmen. But yeah, these are completely unarmoured targets, so if you're worried about getting loads of overpens, you don't. Focusing on the armed ones. Oh, cheeky. Those cheeky transports with machine guns doing more damage than the destroyer did. I do find the armed transports really fun. They've got a 4.1-inch gun as well. I just don't think they can see me. Because they don't have good spotting. Still haven't seen a transport with a torpedo launcher. Because apparently they can have those now. Which I find absolutely hilarious. But yeah, if you're... the other reason I chose a convoy, apart from just to entertain myself, is just to show how destroyers can absolutely fulfill your convoy raiding needs. They are super fast. They can easily obliterate transports. You You really don't need heavy surface raiders to do it. So if you're in the campaign, you're like, oh, I want to go after enemy convoys, consider using a destroyer. They are really good at it. I don't remember how many transports I put in. I think it was 20. But I think they're all gone now. You can see just the kind of brutal efficiency of those 5-inch guns. Cheeky. No, it changed direction. So rude. But now we're able to actually get a read on that enemy destroyer. I don't think she's going to last too long. Bang. 2 big hits. Another big hit. That's the HE going through their armor. And boom. Yeah. Nice. Very satisfying. And you can see here that French destroyer was 20 million. You know, she was in our price bracket. And that's a lot of transports. That's just shows you how dangerous just one of these types of destroyers can be. Really, really useful type of ship to have in your campaign. And I hope that's proven useful for some of you. Let me know in the comments if you try this type of ship out in your campaign and how it gets on. And that is it for this series in terms of how to build ships. If you've got something else you would like me to kind of cover in terms of tutorial how to do something in the game, let me know down in the comments. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. Bye for now.